Right now, there is a space telescope falling out of orbit. It is happening in real-time orbital models from early 2026, put the point of no return, somewhere between late summer and October of this year, depending on solar conditions. The telescope is called Swift. It weighs 1,600 kilograms, spans 12 meters across its solar panels, and over the past 22 years, it has detected more than 2,000 gamma-ray bursts, high-energy explosions, that Swift tracked all the way out to the edge of the visible universe. It was designed to last 2 years. It has now lasted more than 10 times that. Swift has no onboard propulsion. It was never built with one. It was designed to observe, not to maneuver. And now, as the sun enters solar maximum and Earth's upper atmosphere swells outward with the extra heat, atmospheric drag on Swift increases. The spacecraft has no engine to compensate. The operations team at Penn State has done what they can, adjusting Swift's orientation to reduce drag, but there is no substitute for thrust when an orbit is decaying. In February 2026, they made a decision that tells you everything about how serious the situation is. They turned off Swift's instruments entirely. By suspending observations, Swift's gyroscopes ran less, which preserved altitude at the margin. They killed the science to try to save the machine. NASA's response to all of this is a $30 million contract with a startup company that did not exist in its current form 2 years ago for a robotic spacecraft built in 8 months, launching on a rocket that will never fly again after this mission. Nikki Fox, NASA's Associate Administrator for Science, was asked whether the agency could simply build a replacement if Swift is lost. Her answer was unambiguous. We don't currently have the budget to build another one. So this is what it comes down to. One shot, one robot, and a window that closes in a matter of weeks. So here is the part that most coverage of this story glosses over. NASA did not go looking for an innovative new approach to satellite servicing. The fiscal reality forced the decision. The agency that oversees billions in science infrastructure that is currently funding upcoming missions like Roman and Veritas, that agency looked at its budget, looked at its timeline, and concluded that the most financially viable path forward was to hand the problem to a startup in Arizona with a contract, a deadline, and an aggressive schedule. To understand why, you need to understand how NASA has historically thought about spacecraft. The traditional model is simple. Design a mission, build a custom instrument, spend somewhere between 5 and 10 years getting it right, launch it, use it until it dies, and start over. Most science spacecraft are purpose-built for a single mission. Swift, like most of them, was never designed to be serviced. That is an expensive way to operate, but it has been the default approach for decades, and on-orbit servicing has only recently begun to emerge as a viable commercial alternative. Swift Boost is a direct challenge to that model, not because NASA chose to challenge it, but because the numbers left no room for the old approach. A replacement mission for Swift, assuming NASA could design, fund, and build one, would cost somewhere in the range of $250 to $300 million and take the better part of a decade. The agency does not have that money available. Fox said so explicitly. So instead, NASA awarded a $30 million contract under a small business innovation program, set an 8-month delivery deadline, and waited to see what Katalyst Space would build. What Katalyst built is a 400-kilogram spacecraft called Link, equipped with robotic arms, proximity navigation sensors, and enough propulsion to raise Swift's orbit by roughly 240 kilometers, from about 360 up towards 600. The team went from a blank page to a flight-ready vehicle in 9 months. For context, most NASA spacecraft take between 5 and 10 years in development. That compression is either the most impressive thing about this mission or the most concerning thing about it, depending on what happens next. And that is where the story gets more complicated. Before we talk about what Katalyst is trying to do, it is worth talking about what Katalyst actually is. The company was founded by Gonhee Lee, who previously led development of satellite rendezvous technology, with strong ties to U.S. Space Command contracts. The NASA science mission came later, because here is what the official press releases do not spend much time on. China did this in 2021. 4 years ago, China completed a similar orbital boost maneuver on one of its own satellites. It received little attention in Western reporting. When Katalyst and NASA describe Swift Boost as a historic first, Gonhee Lee's own words add the necessary qualifier. This is the first American space robot to go up and do anything like this. That qualifier is carrying a lot of weight. The United States is not pioneering a new technology. It is closing a gap with a competitor that moved earlier and moved quietly. And the capability being demonstrated, the ability to approach an unprepared satellite, rendezvous with it, and make physical contact, is the same foundational capability that would be required to refuel, repair, or capture a satellite that belongs to someone else. NASA is framing this as a science mission. It is also a proof of concept for something considerably broader, and the people at Space Command know that. Now, about the mission itself, there are 3 specific claims in the official narrative that do not hold up to close inspection. The first is Gonhee Lee's statement that Katalyst can service any satellite, even if it doesn't have a launch adapter ring. That is not how this mission actually works. Link will grasp Swift using a set of aluminum flanges on the telescope's exterior ground handling fixtures placed on the telescope's exterior before launch, never intended to survive past the launch pad. They were never intended as docking interfaces. They just happened to be there, and they happen to be structurally adequate for the task. Swift can be serviced because it got lucky with its own hardware. Not every satellite in orbit has comparable provisions. Many do not. The second is the timeline. 9 months from concept to flight hardware is genuinely fast, faster than anything NASA has produced internally in recent memory. But Kieran Wilson, the technical lead who oversaw Link's development, said something in a pre-launch briefing that the official announcements did not dwell on. A lot of spacecraft with far more funding and longer development timelines have failed for mundane reasons. He meant it as a caution. It also happens to be an accurate description of the statistical environment that Link is operating in. The third is the rocket. NASA is using the Pegasus XL, an air-launched vehicle that has been flying since 1990, to demonstrate a new era of rapid commercial servicing capability. This will be the Pegasus's 46th flight, and its last. Northrop Grumman has no plans to fly it again. The infrastructure that makes this particular launch possible will not exist for the next one. Whatever comes after Swift Boost will need to find a different way up. So you have a mission that is partly science, partly a strategic technology demonstration, built on a hardware coincidence that most satellites cannot replicate, assembled in 9 months on a timeline that has never been done before at this level, launching on a rocket that is about to retire, and the window closes in weeks. Whether that sounds like a well-calculated risk or a series of compounding uncertainties depends on where you sit. What is harder to argue with is what happens if it works. Here is what happens if this works. Link docks with Swift, fires its thrusters, and raises the telescope's orbit from roughly 360 kilometers back up towards 600. Swift's instruments come back online. The gamma-ray burst alerts start going out again. And somewhere in a lab at Penn State, the team that spent months watching their telescope slowly fall gets to go back to doing science. That is the version NASA is describing in its press releases. It is a good story. It is also incomplete. Because the thing that gets validated if Link succeeds is not just the technology, it is the business model. A commercial operator working on a government contract has demonstrated that it can approach a satellite that was never designed to be touched, rendezvous with it, grab it with robotic arms, and change its trajectory. On purpose, on a budget, in under a year. That capability does not stay in the science division. It does not stay with NASA. It does not stay pointed at aging telescopes. On-orbit servicing technology is, by design, direction neutral. The same system that raises Swift's orbit can, in a different mission profile, be used to approach other nations' satellites under the cover of servicing. China demonstrated a version of this in 2021. The United States is now demonstrating it in 2026. Both countries are developing this capability, and the strategic implications extend well beyond gamma-ray bursts. Domagal Goldman, the NASA official who championed this mission, captured the stakes in a phrase that has circulated since before launch. When people look back on it, they will either call it crazy or genius. That framing assumes the outcome is still unknown. What is not unknown, what this mission has already moved toward establishing. Whatever the outcome is, that the era of satellites being permanently unreachable is ending. The question is not whether this technology will be used for something beyond science. It already is. So here is what I want to leave you with. In the coming months, if Swift Boost succeeds, there will likely be talk about Hubble being next, about the potential for a commercial servicing industry, about what rapid development could look like going forward. Some of that may prove true. And running underneath all of it, largely undiscussed in the science press, will be the same technology, in different hands, pointed at different targets. Whether that concerns you or excites you probably says something about where you think the next major conflict in space is going to come from, and how soon. If this video made you think differently about this story, or if you already knew something I didn't, I want to hear it. Drop a comment below. Tell me whether you read Swift Boost as a science mission, a strategic demonstration, or something else entirely. Those conversations are usually better than the video. If you found this useful, sharing it is the most effective thing you can do. Most people who would want to watch this have never heard of it. And if you want more stories that go past the press release, subscribe. See you in the next one.